Welcome to the second half of the interview with Vicki Smith, licensed psychotherapist and coach. We are continuing our talk about perfectionism. Vicki is going to share about how perfectionism began in her life, how it showed up in different ways, and when she finally began to decide to address it and work towards her recovery. If you haven't heard the first half of the interview, I really recommend you listen to the first half. Okay, here we go. Let's hear about yours. When did
Uh,
you start with your struggles with perfectionism?
well, as we've talked about, it's baked in. You don't really realize that you're struggling with it for a while. I think that the phrase, you come by it honestly, I did because I grew up with a workaholic dad and a critical dad. I mean, he was critical to himself, obviously, through the workaholism that I had no idea about until much later. And then I felt his criticism. I felt when I missed the mark with him because he expressed that, through his words. So I grew up in that atmosphere of asking myself without knowing, is this okay? Am I going to get in trouble for this? Am I going to feel his harshness, his sharpness, his edginess? So I just developed my perfectionistic part around how do I escape that criticism from him? How do I get his thumbs up or um, his approval really? And the whole hustling for approval thing was really
So, your brain went to perfectionism as a survival technique.
definitely yes. And that's why I try now that I've learned more about the parts of my personality, which is through internal family systems, which is something that I spend a lot of time helping people, helping my clients learn about. It's a form of therapy, but it's about your internal world. I call it your internal advisory council that speak up a lot about what's happening and what's playing out in front of us. But yeah, I developed that perfectionistic part, and I also developed a people pleasing part. If I can disarm you through these two ways of smiling, making you happy, shifting your mood, by taking stuff on emotionally even. And then if I can do this thing where because a lot of times in the early years, it's the outward appearance of, bring home the A, don't wreck my car, come home on time.
Okay,
If
I'm
I
going to
can,
agree with the car thing.
okay, yes,
You
yeah,
probably
because
shouldn't wreck
that,
the car.
right. If I can do those things, then I'll make this person that's important and vital to my survival feel happy towards me, feel I can feel his favor instead of his criticism. And then I can somehow check off this vague, unconscious list of I'm good enough.
How has this perfectionism, how did it impact you and those around you even as you moved into adulthood?
I had this contract with myself that I was not going to go and live at home after college. There was something that I had to get to, whether it was financial freedom from my parents. That was mainly it, right, at first. But then once I got my first job, it was I need to rise in the ranks, right, of some small little software company that I, landed in. But I was like, I got to get out of this position and to the next position, right? What it did for me was there was already a budding workaholic in me. And so it just transferred to, not pleasing my parents, but pleasing the person that I was performing for, right? The person that I showed up every work day to try to make happy. And somehow I thought that was going to help me relax. But then what I noticed about perfectionism is what's the next thing, right? There's no time to celebrate, no time
The
to,
goal moves.
yep, no time to kind of reap the rewards of your hard work. It's just, okay, well, you did that and you were expected to do that. So now what's the next thing? So I think the impact it had on me was honestly, there was never any time for rest. I didn't learn how to slow down, reap the rewards, enjoy the fruits of my labor, all those cliches, but I didn't, I didn't factor that into how the whole thing worked. There was lots of tightness in my body, lots of headaches, lots of stomach aches,
Mm-hmm.
lots of dreading the day. So,
Yep.
anxiety, lots of stories that I wasn't aware of until I got into mindfulness and meditation that I just lived. I lived them out, you know. So, eventually, after years and years and years of this, it's burnout. Literally, the mind sort of shutting down and saying, unless you clean out what's going on in here and we get a little bit more aligned with our priorities and we rest, we're just not going to move. We're literally not going to be able to move forward.
So is that what happened, like, that made you want to get off the roller coaster that is perfectionism?
Yes. Yes. I was sure. I remember it. It was the end of 2017, so it's not that far from now, where I had spent a good amount of time that year trying to convince lawyers that they needed to learn how to relax. And I had put this proposal together of this lunch and learn, and it had the word balance in the title of the proposal. And their HR person said, I don't think this is for us. We don't want our people to feel like they need balance. We want them to feel like they are already balanced. And if you
Oh
come
my
in and
gosh.
tell them that you need something, it's going to make them feel like, they're doing it wrong. And so we're not open to the proposal anymore. And it just woke me up and I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, I am doing the thing that I'm trying to tell people not to do. And I also feel it inside, like I'm completely fried. It just gave me perspective, like you were talking about.
Yep. 2017 was my year too to start.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. I did a lot of internal thinking. It's like you said, your brain will decide when it's had enough. It had
Mm-hmm.
enough. I think of it as one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
far enough away now, I can also see it's probably one of the absolute best things that's ever happened to me.
I hear you.
It's really made me think. I went through, became another person, and I'm another person now. I didn't trust myself to do anything. It was awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's now more of, I trust no one's going to die.
You're right.
No one's going to die, and then it's going to be okay. This is not going to cause the end of the world, and something good might come out of it. So leap.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to push myself to leap all the time. It is not easy. It is
No,
not. I'm still at that point where when I was younger, I could leap a lot more.
same.
And I'm like, we're going to get back there. We're going to get back there. We're going to be a leaper. But right now, if I have to push to leap, then we push.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think about that Friends episode where they're trying to bring the couch up the
Pivot.
stairs.
Love
And
pivot.
sometimes I just hear Ross's voice in my head, and it's just like sometimes you've gotten to some place where you've leaped and you've landed, and you're like, whoop, not what I thought. Pivot,
Yep.
right? because I at least something got me to leap and something got me here, but it's still not lining up with what feels like the next thing for me to be, like the place that I need to do my
Yes.
learning or my growing. So guess what? I have the choice to pivot, and
That
I
is
take
such a sign
all of
of
that with
growth,
me.
is especially with perfectionism, is that when you try something new and you get out of your comfort zone and you are all in the discomfort and you've made this leap and you've shown such bravery to try
Right.
this thing and then it's not working out. And then the perfectionist part of your brain's like, no, 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 you make this work. You stick to this.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's bad. What you need is another part of your brain that says, hey, this isn't working. Let it go. Let's
Mhm.
try something else. There's 87 million other things to watch because it's not. And you need to accept that and internalize it. But to then let that go and make room for something new, and it's tough. And so I am so impressed that you have gotten that ability to leap and then do a follow-up leap, because
Yeah.
that is so to do the double leap, that's like Simone Biles level
I was
of
gonna
mental
say,
gymnastics.
yeah. I mean, I think there's an inner advocate in all of us as well, right? So uncovering her voice, like I've been doing this thing and I've been doing it since the beginning of the year. So it's, it's getting more legs on it right now. But every morning I do an unintentional thought download of just like, this is what's swirling inside without me knowing it. And then I ask myself, and it's a self coaching practice, but I ask myself, like, what would I rather feel? What would I rather be experiencing about these things that are going on in my current life? And what thoughts do I need that will support feeling more energized or confident or open or ready or, you know,
I love
trusting,
that.
right? And so I start to recognize that there is an inner advocate in me and I just have to give her the microphone because that is more intentional thought download. And so today what she said to me was she was kind of like she was like, "Girl, look at what you are doing." And it just went on from there. And I was like, I like hearing from her
Oh,
because
yeah.
she exists and she doesn't have to be on the other side of the tug of war rope from the perfectionist coach and side that can be a little harsh. She doesn't have to be the procrastination and tell me you
No.
can't you can't do this, we're going to shut down. She doesn't have to be in a fight with my perfectionist, but she can be at that inner advisory council table and she can say, what, hold up a second. This isn't the whole story. I've got another viewpoint of how things are going. And we're building it. We're building it and it's happening. You've got to see that. You can't ignore that you're building it and it's happening.
I feel like she's part your inner real self, and she's part the inner you want to be.
Hmm.
And not should be, but really want to be.
Hmm.
I have a name for her.
Oh my God, what is it?
Queen Jack.
Okay.
My nickname is the Queen.
Okay.
Yeah, my family and friends, they all call me the Queen.
Okay.
And I can't believe I did it this year. This is get part of like my recovery. I can't believe I did this stupid thing. I made one of those like inspiration boards on Pinterest.
Uh-huh.
And I used to mock people who would do those. And part of me was like, okay, you keep focusing on what you don't want. Focus on what you do want. And so I'm like, okay, what are the things I want my life to be full of? I want it to be full of my novel writing. I want it to be full of
Hmm.
travel. I want it to be full of pretty things and friends and relationships and enjoying life. And
Yep.
so all things that represent that and that person I want to be, who part of me is. I just made like this collage of all this stuff. And so every so often I go back and I'm like, I revisit. And it's funny, there are times like I'm like, oh yeah, Queen Jack, she's rocking it. Like I've got this playlist
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that is all like music that's going to help me coalesce like and get in touch with Queen Jack.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what her name is for me. She's got some sass, and I love that because that's the energy I want to tap into,
Yeah,
right?
sass is
Because
great.
the perfectionist energy is kind of tight.
Oh,
It's like
too.
wearing a
Yeah,
jacket
yeah,
too
way too tight.
small, right? Yeah. And it's fitting into the box and all that kind of stuff. And if you're a creative, which you are, and I consider myself a creative as
Absolutely.
well,
I can tell
then
you're creative and you've been holding that back too much. I it's nice. I can see with this podcast and the stuff and the drums, you're letting her
yeah,
out and she's
yeah,
tired of being in. And that's
yep,
awesome.
yeah.
And sass is so important because it's not about sassing others, it's about sassing yourself, because that's how I want my inner critic. Because with sass is always a bit of, like, sarcasm and humor,
Yes,
and that's how I want it.
yes, yes.
We shall
So
not
I feel
talk
like
of this.
I feel like it's your girlfriend that's standing beside you and going, girl, that did not work out. And you being like, yeah, but there's all this sunk cost into it. And she's like, girl, you need to let that shit go. Let's
Yes!
move.
Is that not
That's my
what you want your
pivot.
inner critic to sound like?
Yes. That's
Exactly.
my pivot. That's my
Yes.
pivot partner, is that she says that to me. And I just look at her and she grabs my hand and she's like, oh, you can keep looking at it as long as you want to, but eventually you're going to turn that face around and we're going to go forward and we're going to do this next, right? And
Exactly. Yes.
it's
She
like,
gets to be the coach. She gets
yeah,
to be the coach.
yes. Well, she's going to be an inspiration. I'll figure out what mine is and I'll loop back
When
and
you
tell
when
you.
you when she reveals her name, you tell me.
Yep. I got something going on, but I'm not going to put it out into the universe yet. I'm going to see if that's really what her thing is.
She'll
But
let
yeah,
you know. Like something
yeah.
will stick and you just can't get away from it anymore. Speaking of inspiration. Okay, so this is kind of for the listeners. Vicky's podcast, Power to the Pleasers, she did an episode on perfectionism, and that's kind of how I found her. That I found this episode and I listened to it and I loved it. Loved it, loved to hate it, because it was like, oh yeah, that's me. But what was good is, as I said, like I'm on a recovery journey with my
Yes.
perfectionism, and I've got more to go. She's got great advice. Vicki, you have amazing advice of like actual things
Aw.
that can be done. And I am such a practical person. Like I want like something that can actually help me. And there are practical actions that you can take that are
Yeah.
on that podcast. And I was like, I need that booster. Just like you were talking about, like we need inspiration. That's what it was for me. I'm like, oh, you know what? Yes. Have I been really paying attention to my perfectionism? Have I been pushing myself to jump off the cliff? Have I been talking to myself? Have I been letting Queen Jack out? Probably not as much as I should. And that was such a good reminder and booster and techniques. And it's like, okay, yep, you need to be doing this stuff. Don't forget, we need that. And for somebody who is like, wow, okay, that sounds a lot like me, and I think I'm a perfectionist, and you don't even know where to start, go there. I will put the link in my episode notes so you can go to her website. You can find that episode. Start there. It is so good.
Oh,
And she
good.
has so many other episodes about lots of different things. So, like, if you suffer with people pleasing, that's one thing. It's weird. I'm not really much of a people pleaser. I'm a little bit. I think it's so much of the Queen Jack in me.
Yeah.
I I don't suffer so much of the people pleasing.
Well, where were you for me, like when my 20s were
I
happening?
know, I'm
Because
sorry.
I could have really used a little like you don't have to do that. Like stop saying yes.
It was always my inner voice. Like, that was my problem, is I had to people please myself,
Yeah.
and she was enough.
Yeah.
So I didn't need anyone else telling me what to do because my own voice was so high in expectations. I couldn't take on anyone else's crap.
I hear you.
Being a
Yeah.
teacher helps too because you have to get a rhino skin. I mean, the
Hmm.
things that I have been called and told by high school students, you just got to learn to be like, "Oh, you're one of those. I don't care what your opinion is." And I have to say, I never was so vindictive. I failed one of those students because in my book, every student earned their own grade. I always just put out what work they did. And there were some students, let me tell you, they deserved.
Oh goodness.
Well, this has been fantastic. I got free therapy. Uh,
So did I.
but you know what? It doesn't like feel like therapy. It feels exactly what it's like chatting with a friend, which
Yeah.
is free therapy. That's you
Yep.
find those friends who are going to inspire you
Hmm.
and help illuminate, encourage you to get in touch with that inner good voice.
Yep. Call her out.
Yep. When you find those friends, people, you hold tight on them. You nurture that
Hmm.
relationship,
Hmm.
which I just found out Vicky's going to be doing a series upcoming on friendship, and I cannot wait to listen to that because yeah, I think friendship is very important and I've had my own little dealings with it. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so much fun, as if I knew
It
it wasn't going to
has
be.
been. It has been fun, and I appreciate that because we need more of that in our
We
lives. So,
do.
thanks for introducing that to me, offering it to me.
I am glad that we could amp up the fun for both of us. We both brought the
Yes.
fun and we made twice as much fun, and this has been a good time. I hope it's been fun for the listeners as well, and to be honest, if it hasn't, who cares? I'm not a people pleaser. I had a good time and that's what counts.
It was good enough.
That's right. It was good enough. And we're going to end on that note. But seriously, I hope you were either entertained or found this useful. Maybe even both. That would be superb. Thank you so much for sticking around for both parts. It's meant a lot. And I hope you come back next month, that I've got some fabulous guests I have so been looking forward to interviewing. I can't wait to share that with you. Until then, I wish you well.